Hey guys, welcome back. I thought today that maybe we could change gears. No pun intended. But I was thinking about doing a top 10 list. What cars would I want to have in a garage if money was no option? Well, let's start this list off. I've written it down, so if you see me looking at my paper, it's because I can remember a few things, but I'm getting a little older. Alright, number 10 would be the Chrysler Crossfire. It was a sports car that was made around 2005, 2006, 2007. It was during the merger between Chrysler and Mercedes-Benz. Unfortunately, it was built on the past Mercedes Roadster architecture. The styling was hit or miss. People called it a Flash Gordon kind of a look, but I really enjoyed it. They made it in a silver blue. They also made an SRT6 version with a supercharged V6, but the problem with the supercharged car was it rode really, really rough, almost rough to the point where it was undrivable. So the base model car, I would like to have that for sure. My sister actually saw one in traffic because above 40 miles an hour, the spoiler opens up and raises on its own, and she didn't know what that was. So my sister actually likes that car as well. Number 9, I've always, just since I was a kid, I've always wanted a 70s boogie van. Like big murals on the outside, a panel van, bubble windows, a short like Chevy Vandura. Like how would I get you guys to see what I'm seeing in my head? The A-Team van. The spoilers on the bottom of the front bumper, the spoiler up on the top, but with a bubble window or maybe a diamond window on the rear. Maybe a 350, maybe dual exhaust, side pipes. I don't know. It would be really crazy. I know that I would want it to be emerald green with a lot of metal flake. As you can tell, I've had time to think about this. Okay, the next car, number 8, would be an 85, 86, bright red 944 turbo, a Porsche 944 turbo. I spent a lot of time living in Germany, and I remember having seen them quite often. And now that I live in Pella, Iowa, the old band director for the middle school, he actually has a red 944 turbo 5-speed. They're really getting hard to find in good shape, but the local salvage yard here in Newton, Iowa, believe it or not, has 6 or 7 of them. I'm sure they've been there for 15 years, but the parts are available. They're just really high maintenance cars. The next car that I would want would be the 89 Plymouth Laser RS Turbo. I have kind of a connection to this car because people ask me what was the first car that I ever remember really wanting. And I grew up in the 80s, so you would think it would be something like a Trans Am or a Ventura, a Vandura conversion van, but no, it's not. It's not the A-Team, it's not Knight Rider, it's none of that. There was a commercial by Plymouth, and I remember very vividly there was a wall and a red RS Turbo came down the wall straight, hit the ground, and its pop-up headlights went up and down a few times, and the music was Tina Turner. She was the singer for the commercial, and I'll always remember that commercial. But unfortunately, trying to find a laser is almost impossible because it was built with Diamond Star Motors, which was Plymouth and Mitsubishi joined together. And there were 4 different generations of the Mitsubishi Eclipse, 2 generations of the Eagle Talon, but they only did 1 version of the Plymouth Laser. And even though the first generation cars all look the same, I kind of think it's nostalgia for me that I would want the Plymouth Laser. I wouldn't fit in one. I had a friend who had the first generation Mitsubishi, and I did not fit, but, sometimes, we want what we want. Okay, number 6 would be a Honda Civic CRXSI. My friend Joe will tell you that the Civic CRX is his favorite car of all time. One of my friends that taught in Lansing, Kansas, her friend had a white SI. It was a 90. Wasn't in the greatest shape, but I got to drive it. Only has 2 seats and a 5-speed, but as a daily car, that would be perfect. It's fun to drive, gets 50 miles to the gallon. It's becoming a more and more rare sight because, unfortunately, whether we want to admit it or not, a lot of people who want to build Honda Civics or Toyota Celicas, they don't tend to build the most quality cars. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some really quality Honda Civics out there, but a lot of them are just butchered up and destroyed, and that's what's happened to a lot of the CRX cars. The next car, number 5, would be a 1993 Volvo 240 Classic. Anyone who knows me would know that there would have to be one Volvo 240 on this list. 93 was the last year that they made the car. Came with an airbag, had ABS, automatic braking system. You know, that was new then. I'd want one with the 5-speed and the sunroof. They made an edition called the Classic, which was a rare 240 that they made at the very end of the run, kind of like a special edition car. And it had snowflake wheels, and it had a dark hunter green color and a tan interior. And I've wanted one for a super long time, but again, I really only need one project car right now, and the prices for these 240s are going through the roof now, like a lot of these cars. Okay, the next car I would want to own is a 92 Camaro Z28. Third generation Camaros in good shape are hard to come by. 92 was the last year. Had a driver's side airbag. You could get it with a 5-speed. You could get it with a TPI, which is a throttle body injected V8 350, 16-inch wheels. The cars had T-tops. Remember T-tops? Removable glass panels, Smokey and the Bandit? But I've always wanted one, and unfortunately, like I said, living here in Iowa, sometimes the cars that we remember and want to find are harder to get because, I don't know if you know this, but up north they like to salt the roads in the wintertime, and that doesn't exactly bode well for certain cars. Plus, you know, 92, that's a long time ago if we really think about it. Shoot, I got out of high school in 96. But I had a 91, and that one is a nostalgia for me, and I think that that's probably the only reason I would want one. Build quality wasn't exactly great and really didn't put out, you know, real horsepower. Okay, number 3 would be a car that all of my friends know that I've wanted forever. It's a Volvo 850 wagon, 1 year only, 1995. It was the T5R. Volvo, after 1995, finally had a performance division, and it was the R division. Well, the first R car they ever built was the Volvo 850 T5R. Later, they just called them like the 850R. But the first year was T5, which stood for turbocharged 5-cylinder. They made them in a couple different colors. They made them in a pearl white, what they called passion red. They made them black, but there was one color that only showed in 1995. And in Sweden, it was called TGUL, T-Gull Yellow. But in the States, they call it Post-it Note Yellow. And I've always wanted a T5R in Post-it Note Yellow, but I've wanted the wagon. And I wanted it with the 18-inch 5-spoke wheels, you know, real blacked out windows. That's one of those cars that would be a holy grail for me, but it would be hard because the parts are getting harder to find, and anything for Volvo when Ford owned them is getting harder and harder and harder and harder to come by. But if I had the opportunity and I had the money, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's just the cars that come up for sale now, if you find one, it's usually the sedans. And I think if I bought a sedan, it would kind of take the air out of me a little bit because I've always wanted the wagon. That's what I've always wanted. All right, number 2 would be a 96 Corvette C4 Grand Sport. I have loved the C4 Corvette for years. I went to the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky, with some family, and I fell in love. I remembered as a kid watching the A-Team, and most people who remember the A-Team remember the black and gray Vandura van with the red stripe. But what they don't remember was there was a white Corvette with a red stripe that Faceman drove. And I think that's probably where my love for that car really started. But the mid-90s C4s were the best ones because they were the ones with the most technology, the newer engineering. The Grand Sport was a special edition made from racing. The car was blue, a beautiful blue with a red stripe that went up the center and down the back with 2 white stripes on the top of the driver's side fender. And it came with, of course, a throttle injected 350 V8 and LT1. And at that time, at the end of the run of the C4, it had a 6-speed manual transmission. And I've wanted a C4 for most of my life, but they're not really the most practical cars. I would say, when I said I wanted to have the CRX and it would make a fun daily car, that's a daily. But if I have a project, I'd like to take people with me to the car shows that I go to. And as we all know, the plastic fantastic Corvette only has 2 seats. All right, the number 1 car, and it is always number 1 on my list, I really think that'll never change, is a 1981 Ferrari 308 GTS. It is the car that Magnum PI drove, and yes, that's probably where I first saw it, but to be completely honest with you, I just love the body style. I love it so much. They made it in a hardtop, and you can maybe sell me on that, but it's got to be the Targa. I got to have the removable roof panel. I've got to have that panel. There was, I used to be an assistant manager at a grocery store. And on the other side of the parking lot was a place that did photography for weddings or senior pictures. And there was a guy that had worked with my dad before my dad passed away. And he brought his Ferrari 308 GTS out. It was silver, it wasn't red, but it's the closest I've ever come to sitting in one. I got to sit in this car. And there's no way in at all that I will ever stray from this being number 1. Tom Selleck, when he sat in that car, Tom Selleck was 6'4", and they literally had to thin out the bottom cushion of his seat to almost nothing just so that he could get his head to clear the windshield and not look foolish. I'm 6'5". So would it work for me without extensive modifications? No, but just the way the car looks, it's got a gated manual transmission. Gated transmissions mean that there's an actual slot for the stick for every gear that it goes in. And I promise you, and I've promised everybody, that one of these days I will have a red Ferrari 308 GTS. And by one of these days, I mean probably never. But it's been my favorite car and I think even if it wasn't Magnum PI's car, if you look at a Ferrari 308 GTS Targa in red from the early 80s, there's no angle on that car that looks bad. There's a lot of cars out there that you can shoot from different angles and they look really good. And there's some cars out there that you can shoot from just a couple of angles and they look good, and some they don't. But the 308, there's not a shot you can take of that car that does not look absolutely beautiful. All right, my last car is not part of the top 10. But I was thinking, if I could, not counting the CRX, if I could pick a vehicle that would be the perfect daily car for me, what would it be? Be a pickup truck maybe? Would it be a sedan? No. To be honest, what I'm about to say is going to sound really crazy, being that I'm a car person. I would like to have a new Toyota Sienna minivan, because people like SUVs more than they like minivans, and I don't really know where that started, because they act like a minivan is a soccer mom vehicle, which makes no sense anymore, because a soccer mom vehicle is an SUV. That's all anybody drives anymore, so that is a soccer mom vehicle. The good part about a minivan like the Sienna is it gets better gas mileage than an SUV. You can get it in front wheel or all-wheel drive. You can fit more people in it than you can in most SUVs. And when you put the seats down on all three, the second and third row, there's plenty of room to haul whatever you want to haul. And I've never quite understood this hatred for minivans. You know, I'd like to have a black all-wheel drive Toyota Sienna with leather heated seats and the Toyota reliability. But when I wanted to take somebody somewhere, I'd have plenty of room. And then when I want to go to a salvage yard and get the parts I need, crazy story. My friend Joe had a Honda Odyssey. Joe wasn't married at the time. He had been divorced for a while, and he had kids that came to visit every other week. But for his daily car, he had a Honda Odyssey minivan. And he was like me, where he said, it's so practical. We were at the salvage yard, and we pulled a motor, a K-Series motor for his Honda Civic, and we didn't have a truck to bring it home in. And they were closing. We could have gone and borrowed our friend's truck, and Joe said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, the cherry picker that picked the motor up wouldn't fit in the back. Believe it or not, the sliding door on the side of this thing opened wider than the back hatch. So the people at the salvage yard were taking pictures, and they were laughing so hard because we stuck the motor through the side door of the van and brought it home that way. So if you want to talk about, you know, reliability, Toyota. If you want to talk about room to haul people, minivan. Put those two together, and what do you have? You have a daily vehicle that's a Toyota Sienna. Well, I thought this was kind of fun to do, and it was something different. If you guys like this, let me know. Uncle Dave.